Hello there, saints, and welcome to Saved and Justified with me, Lebogang Caesar. I hope everyone is good, in good spirits and that you're having a wonderful week. I'm in good spirits, true, as always. Okay, so today's topic, we are going to be talking about disobedience, and we will be using Moses as our case study. I've used Moses before, seem to like Moses, and I didn't even realize it. Anyway, the Holy Spirit will lead me to this one. So, it's this whole story of how Moses didn't make it into the land of milk and honey, into the promised land. He led the whole thing. And I just was wondering, but why? Because for me, it seemed like the sentence that God gave to him and Aaron was a bit too harsh for the crime that they seem to have committed against God. I was like, it's just, and considering that it's Moses, God, it's your Moses. But as I was studying, and the more I studied, and I kept on repeating to read it, I realized that there's certain things we can learn from the story that we shouldn't do as well. And so we're going to be discussing disobedience and what can lead to disobedience and the result of living a life of disobedience. So I'm going to read it. Is Numbers 20 from verse 6. Let's start at verse 6. So it's the whole story. We know that the children of Israel were asking Moses and Aaron, did you bring us here to for us to die? There's no water, we're gonna die of thirst, even our livestock doesn't have water. And then Moses and Aaron went to God. So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together. Right? Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. Verse 10, and Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock and said to them, hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock? Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animal drank. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me, to hallow my name, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. That's verse 12. And so from here, we can already see where it starts. So God gives Moses a clear command, a clear instruction. Go, take your rod, gather the assembly of people in front of the rock, speak to the rock, and the rock will yield its water. Moses goes, obeys step 1, obeys step 2, disobeys step 3. Instead of speaking to the rock, Moses strikes the rock twice with his rod. Yes, the rock releases the water, yes, but that is not what God told him to do. As I'm reading, I'm like, but Moses, why would you do that? Where did you get that idea from? Because God said speak to the rock. Why in the world would you do that? And I'm like, could it be because Moses did the same thing in Exodus 17 when he hit the rock with his rod and water came out? And I'm like, okay, so he's done that before. Could it be that Moses was familiar with God and his ways? And that's the first thing about disobedience that leads to disobedience. Familiarity with God and his ways. When we feel like we know what God is going to do, we know God so well that we don't even have to consult, or even if we consult and he gives us an instruction, we can always jazz it up because we know God. He works in this way. Right? Because, why else would he do that? If he had never done that before, Moses wouldn't even have an idea of hitting that rock with a rod. It's because he had done it before and it had worked that he felt like it's okay to do it again. And he might not even have been thinking that it's a big deal, but it is a big deal because him doing it that way was disobeying this current instruction. So we need to understand, even with ourselves, that there is always a new word for every new season. This was a different season. It wasn't the same thing. And he used yesterday's, last season's ways to deal with today's issues. And God is saying, you cannot limit me. Because once we do that, once we start thinking, oh, I know God. He's going to say I must do this. He's going to say I must do it like this. He's God after all. What we're doing is that we're saying we know God. And we are saying we know him so well that he can surprise us. We know his ways. And in actual fact, what we're doing is we are limiting God. We are putting God in the confinements of whatever we think he is. So even no matter how large we think this confinement is, at the end of the day, we are putting him in a box because we are saying we know he's going to do this and that and this and that. Even if we say, but it's he controls everything, and we feel like, oh no, this box is too, it's a box nonetheless, and God cannot fit in our boxes. I mean, earth is his footstool. This whole earth that we live in, he puts his foot on it. He rests his foot on it. That's his foot. That's how big he is. We can never restrict him, and we should not constrict him in our minds. We should not even constrict him in our ways, in our thinking, in our belief as well, because once we start restricting him in our minds, our belief is also altered. The way we believe in God is also affected, because then we think that certain things he can't do because we've restricted him. And we can never even think in our own minds. Well, our mind is not big enough to think of how vast God is. So the first thing that can lead us to disobedience is familiarity with God, feeling comfortable with God, feeling like you know him and his ways, and that it leads to a certain level of arrogance, because you feel like, I know, he's going to do it this way, Like, it's the same thing if you think about it, that, who was it? Jonah did. Jonah, after him refusing to go to Nineveh, then after the people prayed, when he sent God's message, and the people prayed, and then God didn't wipe out the whole city, then Jonah was like, I knew this. I knew you're a merciful God. I knew you're not going to do that. Once again, it's familiarity with God. It's thinking that you know God so well that, because that's what Jonah was doing. It was like, when he ran away, he knew this one is merciful. He's not going to do what he wants to do. So I'm not even going to go there. I'm not bothered. And that's what disobedience does. You start being arrogant, thinking that you know better than God, and that you're not even going to follow his instructions, which is disobedience. So the first thing is familiarity. The second thing that can lead to disobedience is unbelief. Like I said, once you get arrogant and once you get familiar, it not only affects your mind, then it starts affecting the way you believe in God. Because in verse 12, then the Lord spoke to Moses. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me. Believe me. Not even believe in me. Believe me. And God is saying that because God is what said to Moses, speak to the rock. And Moses thought, I've done that. It has worked. Let's do that. And that's what we do sometimes. It is a matter of unbelief. Because sometimes we have things in our lives that have worked. There's a way that you do things. There's a way that you work. There's a way that you serve. There's a way that you do everything. There's a certain road or street that you take every time when you go to work, and it has worked and it has proven to work. There's a certain way you do specific things that is guaranteed to work. And when God gives you a new word, you feel like this is new. And of course, it's a test of your faith, but you feel like, there's a lot riding on this. I don't have time for this. God, we can do it next time. But for this time, this one, I know for sure it worked. And that's kind of what Moses did, because he knows hitting the rock has worked before, and this one is new. I need to be certain, because sometimes we feel like we're just playing it safe, and in case this new way doesn't work. And the minute we start saying things like, in case what God has told me doesn't work, belief is out the way. Belief just left the room. It has locked itself out, and we no longer have belief in God. And God saying this, he's not even saying you don't believe in my ways. It's you don't believe me, because he is saying that you speak. And at the end of it, Moses speaking to the rock, the job of water coming out would have been completely up to God. And Moses was forgetting that throughout the whole entire thing, it has still been God, even though there were perhaps physical things that Moses had to do. But at the end of it, it was God doing all those miracles. He works through us, but it is still him. And I mean, for to whom much is given, much is expected. This is so true, because I think if it had been someone else, maybe God wouldn't have been given such a sentence to Moses. But because it was Moses, God expected more from Moses. And some of us cannot afford to be doing things that other people do, because God expects more from us. Sometimes you look at people and they get away with such things and you're like, excuse me, what about me? You know, like, can I do that? And you know, you've got that conviction that you know that you cannot get away with that. You can't even be caught doing that. And that's because much is given to you and much is expected from you. And the same with Moses. God was probably thinking that, dude, we've been like at this together for so long and you still don't believe me. Like, I mean, before God came to Moses in the burning bush, that rod was just a rod. It was just a rod for him to herd his sheep. That's it. But the minute God entered the scene, it became something else. And it was God. At the end of the day, it was God. Even when he lifted it to part the Red Sea, it was God. And perhaps for Moses, he felt like a physical thing, doing something physical would be more believable than just speaking. And in this way, once again, we are limiting God, because we feel like these other ways are working and they've worked while ruining a good thing. And we are limiting God to say that God cannot find new avenues and new ways to do things. There's always new ways to do things. And as seasons changes, the way God did things last year is not the way he's going to do it this year. Never do that. And once again, that is just limiting God. And number 3, that can lead to disobedience is pride. Pride. Because when we read, I think it's verse 10, let's go back. Yes, verse 10. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Yeah. See, and when God is saying in verse 12 that he says, "Because you did not believe me, to hallow my name, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given you." Because you feel like, how did he not hallow you? Like, how did he not bring honor to you in the eyes of the children of Israel? How did he not present you holy in the eyes of the children of Israel? And when you go back to verse 10, it's how they said, "Must we bring you water out of this rock?" What they were doing is, first of all, this movie that they are playing, they're adding extra effects. No one said they must speak that. God did say speak, but he didn't say that. So that's a whole new dialogue that they just adding in there. And they're saying we. And the minute they say, "Must we bring water out of this rock for you?" And then Moses did a physical thing of hitting the rock twice, and water did indeed come. What happens then is that the children of Israel start focusing their eyes on Moses and what he just did. And in that, God is not featured anyway. And what God was trying to do was tell the children of Israel, I am holy. I am a holy God. I am a good God. How can I take you through all that, take you out of captivity, to just let you die of thirst? First of all, I've done it before, where water has come out of a rock. And now would I do this and let you die of thirst here? Why would I do that? And he was trying to show them that, do not doubt me. I have many ways of working. And in Moses speaking to the rock, the people would have then realized that, okay, Moses didn't do anything. All he did was speak. So clearly, God is backing him up. And then the honor would have gone back to one who deserves that honor, which is God. But in Moses saying, "Must we bring out water," is him taking credit for hitting the rock and then water coming out. He's taking credit for something that he had nothing to do with. It was all God. And that, at the core of that, is pride. It's you. And even the way they're addressing the people. What did they say? "Here now, you rebels." You know, like the way they were approaching them, all self-righteous. And in the meantime, they were walking into just a trap of disobedience. And it doesn't matter that these people had been complaining over and over, because Moses did go through a lot though. Those people just kept on complaining. But anyway, it didn't matter that he just walked into a trap of disobedience, and it doesn't matter what leads you to that disobedience. The fact is, there was no one was holding a gun to his head to say, hit that rock with your rod. God had given him a solution, but he chose to alter that solution. He chose to add extra effects to that solution. And at the core of that was pride. And pride does that to us as well. Pride does really lead to our downfall, because at the end of the day, they didn't go into the land of milk and honey because they took credit where credit wasn't due to them. We can sing all honor, all glory, all power belongs to God, yet when we take it from him, which is what he did, when we take credit for something that we have no business taking credit of, God does not like that, and there's consequences for us doing that. So if we're in the business of doing that, stop now. Like, just stop. God doesn't like that. It pushes us away from God. He sees it as rebelling against him. He sees disobedience as rebelling against him. Because once pride gets in, you start thinking that you're the one with the power, and you start taking your gift as if that's the thing that you should praise. You start worshiping your gift. So whatever gift God has placed in you, and you are able to do things, whatever answers to your prayers he has done, those are not the things where the glory must go. The glory must go to one who gave you those things, which is God. Okay, and then finally, what all these things, so if you are too familiar with God, if you have unbelief, if you have pride, and you get into the habit of living a disobedient life, disobedience can alter the trajectory of your life. It can change your whole destiny. This is what happened to Moses. Because think about it, look at it. Moses was there to take these people, lead them out of Egypt. Through all that, there was manna coming from heaven, all that, only to miss the promised land. Come on. And that's what disobedience does. It just changes where you were going this direction, and all of a sudden it's halted because of disobedience. And like I said, remember, to whom much is given, much is expected. So if you see people living in a disobedience and they're still able to go in front of your church and testify of how good God has been, but they live lives of disobedience, don't envy them. Do not envy them. What God has placed inside of you is something different, and therefore the expectations are different. So never compare yourself to other people and how they're living sinful lives, disobedient, hot and cold, lukewarm people there on the fence. It's not your business. Your business is to live a life of obedience. There is a reward for that. And like Samuel said to Saul, obedience is better than sacrifice. We need to just start being obedient to God. And the more obedient we are, the closer we get to God. And that also starts building our faith when we are obedient in the daily activities, in what God tells us. So that the day he tells you to do something huge that seems so big, you will remember that, but he has been with me, and he's never disappointed me, and he's never put me to shame every time I've obeyed him. So therefore, even this one that seems just too much for me to grasp, I will obey, because I know that God will not put me to shame. He does not forsake the righteous. So saints, I really hope that this helps us identify those things in our lives, those areas that we need to work on that are affecting us to live lives of disobedience, to just go walk into traps of disobedience like Moses did. And I hope we really understand the impact of disobedience, that it can change our whole life. Some of us living stagnant life, and you are feeling like your life is challenge after challenge, and you're feeling like, no man, I feel like I'm in the wrong place. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, but where I am is not sometimes it might be because there was disobedience. Perhaps God had given you instruction to go somewhere else, and you decided to go another place. And where you are, you feel like a misfit, and it's because of disobedience. So the best thing is to go back to God. Ask him, like, where he wants you to be. Ask him where he wants to take you, and get ready to obey, because some of the things might not make sense. That's what I can tell you. Some of the things might not make sense even after you've done them and you feel like, I did it, okay, what's going to happen next? God might not even reveal it to you then, but just get into the habit of obeying God. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Disobedience can mess up with your whole destiny. It can mess up with your whole life. Let's not get too familiar with God or his ways. Let's not get, let's build our belief and start believing in God. And the more we obey, the more our faith in God will grow. And pride, we need to watch out for that pride, that ugly monster of pride, because pride is the one that will have us taking glory that does not belong to us. It will have us ignoring God and not honoring him, where honor and glory belongs to him. I hope this helps, saints, and that we can be Christians that obey God, man. The Christians that grow closer and closer to God, that we will know for sure that really God is not gonna, like this in case is not necessary when it comes to God. There is no in case it doesn't work out. With God, it's gonna work out. Even on the surface, if it looks like it's not working out, believe me, it is working out according to God's plan. He will not put us to shame, and the righteous will not be forsaken. I thank you for joining me, saints. I hope you have a lovely weekend. See you next time. Bye bye, saints.